Well. Welcome, and welcome. I hope these things are helping you, adding value to your life. You're finding some resources for conversation with people. You're finding content to go and just engage some people with. And that's my intention, that you really find something to, whenever you're hanging out with friends or whenever you have those conversations with people or you're having a group meeting with people, you can say, hey, let's listen to this and see what we think about it. You might agree with what I'm sharing, you might not agree, but all that is okay because then there's conversation that this sparks in your spaces of interaction. Now, many of us want to live an intentional life. I'm yet to meet someone who says, me, I don't care. I want to be as accidental as I can. Many of us want to plan our life. Many of us want to be successful, to achieve goals, to really, at the end of the day, say that we lived a good life. Many of us, at least the most people that I know. We all want to look back and be happy at how our lives have been. But unfortunately, we become very accidental. And we do things that sometimes makes you wonder, why? What was I thinking? And of course, we are human beings and we're not perfect, and that's okay. But sometimes we do things and you go like, what was that all about? What was I really thinking? How could I do something like that? And I want us, and one of the tools that have really made me, and that put me on the edge of my seat, and every now and then, of course, if you've interacted with me, you've heard me talk about intentionality. And sometimes you wonder, what exactly do you even mean when you're asking someone to be intentional? And I think for me, this tool really breaks it down for me very well. For me to give something to think through. So that when I'm thinking of being intentional, I'm thinking of the 5 circles of influence in my life. Some of us might be intentional in one circle, but accidental in another. Some of us might just be, it's okay, I deal with this as it comes. Or in other aspect of our life, we're really planning and we're facing issues. We are taking responsibility. We are really clear on what we want. We are not dilly-dally. We get up and go. We get up and do what we need to do. Now, many of us as it is, maybe you are in that category of people who, when it comes to yourself, you're really very intentional. You're making sure you're reading that book. You're making sure you're signing up for that course. You're making sure you're praying every morning because you really want to check on your spiritual growth. You're following up on your spiritual journey. You're making sure you're dealing with the negativity. You're not letting the negativity come into you. You're very intentional with yourself. And some of us, maybe with family, you're very intentional. You're engaging in the conversation that you need to engage in at the right time. You are dealing with family in the right way. You're intentional in addressing issues that arise during family conversations. You're really taking responsibility as a family member. Maybe you're a firstborn, maybe you're a lastborn, maybe you're in there between. You're really playing your role well. And when it comes to even walking a journey with your other siblings, you're very intentional and you don't let anything slide. When it comes to really supporting your parents and making sure your parents are really being able to be taken care of, you're intentional in that and you don't just let things pass you by. You're like, okay, you're calling your parents every often. So when it comes to that family space, you're very intentional. Maybe you're a parent and you have teenage kids. You're very intentional on what you like. You're not just like, you hope they turn out well. You have children and you just, because someone said hope is not a strategy. So you're not just like, oh, I hope my children turn out well. But you're intentional, when it comes to disciplining them. You're intentional when it comes to advising, coaching, training, speaking into their lives. You're very intentional. Some of us, maybe you have a team you work with. And you're very intentional with your team. When there's an error, you address it immediately. You deal with issues as they need to be dealt with. You encourage your team members. You pour into their lives and you really support and motivate them and encourage them to go above and beyond. And you also deal with the issues as they arise. If there's giving any feedback, you give feedback appropriately and you give feedback in a way that you want the person to grow, not just to belittle the person, but you're giving feedback as needed. And maybe your team, you pouring into your team. You are there for your team. Some of us, maybe you're very intentional in your organization. And you know, we have a vision for our organization. We have a mission for our organization. And as organization, we need to conquer, we need to grow. And you're very intentional. And when you stand up and speak about the issues and what your organization is all about, you bring it with clear articulation that people understand what you're talking about. And you're very intentional when you show up to work. You're very intentional with the brand you're building as an organization. You're very intentional with the image that you want people to see about your organization. Very intentional about it. Some of us in our community, very intentional. We, in our neighborhood, we don't take things for granted. You visit the nearby children's home because you want to impact your community. You are doing something. Maybe you're in your place of worship. You're not just one of those who walks in and walks out living. But when you go in, you're really engaged in that space because you're very intentional in that space, and you want to see that your community becomes a better community. When there's issues to be addressed by the leadership of the community, you take it up and you go and address those issues without waiting for anybody to tell you. You take up initiative to go do what you need to do. And so I don't know, when I highlighted those 5 circles of influence, I don't know which of those you looked and like, I don't think I'm very intentional in that space. Personally, there are moments that I find that I become so much intentional about myself, but accidental about my family. And so when I look at some issues, I'm like, I needed to really have that conversation with my spouse. But then you're not having the conversation. You're waiting. You're hoping that the issue will resolve itself. But then as you wait, it simmers and it's swept under the carpet. And it's lying there. It's not resolved. It's lying there. Because one day it's going to come up. Or you are one person, you have an issue with your team. And instead of talking about it and addressing it, you're hoping they will figure out that you are not happy with them. You're hoping they will somehow come around and do what you're telling them to do. Instead of saying, I think I need to face this head on and have that conversation, or hire whoever I need to hire, or fire whoever I need to fire, or address the issue, or stop the drama from spreading. And so, when you look at that, being accidental could be a case, living an accidental life could be a case where maybe you're just intentional in one area, or maybe 2 areas, but all the other areas you're very accidental. Now, the goal for an intentional person is to be intentional in each and every sphere of your life, in each and every cycle of your life. And that's not easy. That's not easy because we are human. So how then do you start being intentional when it comes to yourself? What do you need to do? What do you need to pay attention to? Do you need to take care more of your spiritual life? Do you need to look at your mental capacity? Do you need to do something around that space? Do you need to do something about your social life? Do you need to do something about your physical life? Do you need to do something about that so that you're intentional? Do you need a coaching program? Do you need to look for a mentor? Do you need to go and just say, okay, I need a mentor, so that you can be more intentional? Do you need to be able to talk to a friend of yours about what you're going through? Do you need counseling for you to be more intentional about yourself? And when it comes to your family, is there that conversation you need to revisit? Is there that thing you need to do? Do you need to spend more time with your children? Do you need to spend more time with your spouse? Do you need to go visit your parents because you've never seen them for quite some time? Do you need to call that uncle and apologize? Do you need to call that whoever it is? And maybe in this circle of family, you can also put friends. Maybe you don't have a family, but you have some friends who will become closer to you. In a sense, you view them as family because they become so closely knit around you. What exactly is that elephant in the room that you need to address? And just say, hey, I've noticed that in the past few days, our conversation has been short. Can we revisit this? Can we talk about it? So that then we can address this issue, so that we address the elephant in the room. For your team, is there someone you need to reprimand? Is there someone you need to encourage? Is there someone you need to talk to about something? For your organization, is there some conversation you need to have around the vision, around the goal of your organization? And how then do you build the brand of your, there are some consistency issues you need to address with how people perceive your organization. And of course, your community. What exactly do you need to do? Do you need to go out there and play your role in the community? Do you need to know who your MCA is? If you're a Kenyan, do you need to know who your local leader is? The community leaders, do you need to engage with them in a conversation? Do you need to know your next door neighbor? Do you need to not wait until you're in crisis before you find out who is your neighbor? And so I don't know where you are in this place, and I don't know whether you are intentional in each and every cycle of your influence, or are you accidental in one of those? And I want you to reflect over that, and maybe there's something you need to do in one of those circles. Kindly be intentional. Take responsibility. Go look for help. Talk to someone about it. And I pray and hope that you'll find help in that situation. Thank you very much, and I hope this helps you as you reflect around the 5 circles of influence.